How's it going, guys? Hope you're all having a great day so far. Today's video we are looking at the demon on World of Tanks, and that is this tier 6 Russian tank destroyer, the SU100Y. This thing is an absolute monster when it comes to tank destroyers at tier 6. Obviously, you can see in the top right hand corner of the screen just how much damage this thing can do in one shot. It is a single shot, it's not an autoloader. This thing really does have 510 alpha damage at tier 6, meaning that you can take out pretty much anyone below you in terms of the tiers. So tier 4s, tier 5s, you can one-shot almost all of them other than the heavy tanks that you'll meet. And even when you come up against things like the Tiger 1 or the Tiger 2, which you can face, obviously it's a +2, -2, so you can come up against both of those kinds of tanks. And the one thing that this thing can do is basically take off chunks and chunks of hit points off of everyone. You can pick up a stupid amount of actual destroyed enemies per battle, and that is one thing that you just definitely should be able to do within the game, and that's one feature of this tank that just makes it exceptional compared to the other tier 6 tank destroyers that you can get. Obviously there's a few differences between this and something like the Hellcat 105. This thing lacks the mobility that the Hellcat 105 can provide towards you. If we have a look at some of the statistics between them, obviously the Hellcat can go an extra 30 kilometers faster, but it does get that severe drop in alpha damage, so you get 200 left or 160 less alpha damage per shot. This thing gets more hit points, but the problem is with these hit points is that if you have a look at the armor model, it really doesn't get very many, well, it's not thick armor at all, and realistically you're never going to bounce a single round in this thing, unless obviously they hit your mantlet at some silly angle, and then you know that you may have a chance at being able to actually block a shot, but for the majority of situations you will not be able to actually bounce any shots in this tank. And that's kind of the trade-off, I guess, with having this huge alpha damage gun at tier 6. It's kind of like the equivalent to the tier 6 Death Star or the tier 6 4005 from the British line. Obviously this one's a Russian one, and that's why you know, it's kind of like the Russian Death Star, but we're going to nickname it the Demon of tier 6, and this basically will send people's souls back to the garage, and definitely this thing will claim a few of the enemy's lives. Now, in terms of the setup with this tank, we have gone with the advanced loader, we've gone with advanced optics and advanced concealment, so there's a lot of advancing with this tank, other than the playstyle anyway. But certainly this tank can provide some good bonuses, and that's why we went with the loading time. You want to get that alpha damage out as quickly as possible, and hence the 10% buffed DPM that this tank does get. So we're going to be dishing out more damage with this equipment. Then we went with the optics just to get that view range up, because often you're going to get outspotted in this tank unless you have this equipment in it, and that's kind of why I went with the spotting build. As a tank destroyer, you want to buff as much of the camouflage as possible and outspot opponents, because, you know, if you're coming up against people that are outspotting you, and a paper tank destroyer especially, you're really not going to have a fun time. So using the knowledge of the game, the bushes in the game, to be able to have those fantastic gameplay and just remain undetected for the whole match is something that you really need to do in a tank like this. Obviously we'll have some gameplay on screen in a second, but one last thing is the consumables. We went with enhanced repair kit, med kit and rations, or enhanced rations, just to boost up that kind of reload time again, and yeah, it will just boost up the tank's overall effectiveness in the game. In terms of, we should note, obviously we should put camo on this if I'm planning on actually playing it for any length of games, just to get that camo bonus or concealment bonus that you can get with camouflage. Obviously it does cost some silver unless you have camo vouchers, which some people will already have from playing various different season passes and stuff like that. Otherwise you can purchase it for gold or silver depending on whether you want it permanently or you want it on 30 days. Now, getting into the gameplay in right now, I think, is where we're going to go. So we've got two helpings of gameplay to get into for you guys today. This one is on mines. We're going to have a look at the sort of position you want to be taking your SU100Y should you choose to pick it up. It is in this week's personal offers that you can pick up. I think it's only 1,800 gold. It's definitely a steal if you want kind of a low tier premium that is just a bundle of fun to actually have a go in, and this one definitely is that, especially. We've set up in this position at the beginning of the game in mines because we know often medium tanks and light tanks will go up into the middle of the map at the start of the game, and we're going to try and catch out anyone that decides to make that decision as well. It's a really kind of a position where, you know, as long as we wait here, we're going to be able to deal damage. The one problem that we do have, of course, is artillery. If we do get spotted, we need to get into RT safe position as quickly as possible, and we plough around straight into the absolution there, which is absolutely perfect. I despise playing against that tank. It is one of those mercenary ones that came out a long time ago and was just completely broken, and certainly one I did not like playing against. So taking as much of his hit points away as possible is something I enjoy very much. And we also managed to pick up the Wojciech within that small amount of time, and we've managed to deal 800 damage at tier 6 already, which is fantastic. And then the Absolution decides to give me the rest of his hit points as like a consolation prize, I guess, for playing in the Demon. He wanted to be taken back to the garage as quickly as possible, and we definitely gave him a little helping hand with that. So what are we doing now? We're going to get into a position which is going to benefit us. I think for the majority of situations, this tank is quite inflexible, I'd say. It does have gun depression, and it does have the ability to outspot opponents should you put the right equipment, as we've already gone over. And you know, if we can manage to put ourselves in the right position, like we did against that OI there, kind of pre-aiming at people who are going to be coming around, then you can have these games where you're constantly dealing 500 damage, 300, 400, you know, these high damage rolls against the opponents that you come up against. Obviously, it kind of depends on the hit points of the vehicle you're coming up against and what tier you're at, because, you know, the high penetration on these rounds that do extra damage, they are premium rounds, so I do exclusively fire APCR. You take a hit of 20 penetration down from 193 down to 171, I think it is. You know, that's not a massive jump, and certainly if you're coming up against tier 8s, 190 pen and 170 pen pretty much are the same, to be honest with you. Not a massive jump, and it's not really going to make too much of a difference, hence why we're firing the premium. Now it is APCR, which means that we do actually get more damage with the premium rounds in this tank. So instead of getting 460 alpha, I believe, we actually get this 510 alpha on this tier 6. So you know, it does create this kind of pay to win aspect in terms of you can pay gold or silver, I should say, and you'll get more damage. And you know, there's no reason why you wouldn't fire premium in this tank. You earn extra silver in this thing, which means that, you know, as long as you pen your rounds, or you pen the majority of your rounds, you're going to make money in every game that you play in this tank. And yeah, I think that that's something that people need to be aware of. You know, if you don't fire any, you're going to be at a disadvantage should you come up face to face with the opponent's Demon. Now, what kind of things can you do with this tank? Well, you've seen we've picked up, you know, 2,500 damage this quickly in the game, just pumping shots into all of these heavy tanks that are deciding they're going to advance. We're using these bushes in front of us to remain concealed against our opponents until we fire, and then we're pulling back behind the rock to try and stay RT safe. Well, as much as RT safe you can be on World of Tanks. Obviously this is mines, so it's a pretty stale map towards the end of the game, because, you know, there's only so much you can do. We do get hit there by the 40 TP, which isn't a big shell anyway. It's only like 104 damage he dealt to us, but nothing to worry about there. And certainly we'll poke up again, remaining undetected against this guy, and hopefully we can take him out once again. In terms of like the kind of, we kind of got a bit lucky in this game, I'm not going to lie. They kept coming into us. We've obviously got a fairly large gun on this thing. They're really not going to be any threat to us, you know, unless they rush us all at once, and all the artillery pens us, obviously. And it's kind of a case of just holding off the barrage of enemies that just slowly make their way towards us in this thing, and that's how this tank actually favours. If you can put yourself in a position on a map, which there are plenty on various different maps, where enemies will have to advance into you, or you can remain kind of a defensive position where you just block off an entire street on, say, a map like the new Mannheim map that we have got on console. Obviously that's for PS4 and Xbox One, so both combined. You know, if we kind of play this kind of a derpy role, where we're just kind of waiting until the opponent comes around the corner, we're going to derp 500 damage into them, and then we're going to pull around that corner, and then we're going to wait again. We're not going to pull out with this tank, because pulling out is obviously not everyone's favourite thing to do. Yeah, this tank is no different. You don't really want to be pulling out in front of enemy tanks, and that's where this thing will kind of get wasted, basically. Obviously, you see this game, we had a pretty good one. We got a mastery badge for our second game ever in this tank, as I picked it up this week. Dealing 3,500 damage and a little bit of assistance wasn't bad. And yeah, this demon certainly took a few tanks back to the garage for us in this game. We're going to see how many more we can pick up in the next bit of gameplay. And our final game clip is here. This is a tier 8 game on console. Obviously, we are bottom tier in the game. There's very little tier 6s in the game, and that's probably due to the matchmaker at the moment. Obviously, if you play anywhere around tier 8, it's going to be flooded with tier 8s because of obviously the premium tanks that have been released as part of the season pass, and also them doing very regular releases of free premium tier 8 tanks. You know, it's not so fun when you're playing those tier 7 and 6 tanks, where you're pretty much, I don't know, 7 times out of 10 coming in tier 8 games against tanks that are just way better than you. But this tank is one of those that can actually do quite well in tier 8 games, just because there's a lot more hit points available for you to be able to farm. You've just got to play very, very passively, and that's kind of the playstyle of this tank, and so it suits even better when you come into these games. And you can certainly still pick apart opponents if you know how to pen them. The only problem is obviously your penetration becomes a factor whereby it can actually kind of ruin your games sometimes. And you're not necessarily going to be able to carry 1 versus 5 in this sort of tank, unless obviously the opponents are weak that you're coming up against. And you know, when you put yourselves in those kind of positions, you're more than likely going to lose anyway, whether you were a tier 8 or a tier 6. So I think that, you know, this tank can still be used very, very effectively. As you see, we dump a shot into the enemy VK 3001P. He didn't have a very fun game, and that's the kind of what happens when you come up in a tier 8 game, and as soon as you get spotted in a tier 6 on Prokhorovka on the left hand side of the map, that's basically game over for you. Now, with regards to our playstyle on this map, what we're doing is we're going to use these concealment. We're going to use the bushes over on this left side to basically just stay in the back and snipe is essentially what our tank class is best at. You know, we've got the alpha damage, we've kind of got that concealment factor to be able to do that, and our tank class isn't meant to be brawling up close and personal with especially bottom tier. In the SU100Y, we did manage to actually track someone there, or damage a module on one of the tanks, whether we hit their cupola, whether we actually just hit the tracks and didn't actually detrack them. But unfortunately, with the second shot, we didn't actually manage to deal any sort of damage, whether that be actual damage or critical damage, which is unfortunate, but you know, it's not that big of a problem. We realised that the Borsig did get spotted over there, so we're just going to aim and kind of try and get one shot of damage off over there. Unfortunately, it didn't happen once again, but you know, if you don't take those short of shots, you're never going to get damage, and sometimes you will actually be able to deal a little bit of damage to the opponents that you're firing at blind. You know, it's kind of one of those things where I didn't really have much else to shoot, so I might as well try and go for the blind shot. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and that's kind of the difference between a player that maybe doesn't quite understand the game as well as, you know, sometimes you do have to take those shots. Even when an opponent disappears off the map or off the radar, you're not going to be able to hit them if you don't actually shoot at them, and more than likely the person's still going to be in the same sort of area on the map, so long as, you know, you are kind of aiming well. And talking about aiming well, unfortunately we didn't, I guess, aim low enough so that it was more than likely going to hit the lower plate of the VK, because it does have that spaced bar where you're unlikely to be able to pen. Unfortunately hit the very kind of angled bit of his turret, which bounced off again, kind of costing us a little bit of extra damage that we could have really done with in this game to make it one of those crazy damage games. I mean, it was an exceptional game in the SU100Y, but it did kind of feature a little kind of thing about you can still be competitive in tier 8 games, even in tier 6s, and I mean, it's not going to be the best of fun when you do get caught out in the open by a tier 8, which can take half your hit points. Well, most tier 8s can take half your hit points in one shot, and you've got no chance of really bouncing unless they hit your tracks with heat, or, you know, hit your mantlet with heat. It's kind of one of those situations where you just got to be a little bit careful of when you get spotted, and maybe not taking the shot when you could have, just to get some extra damage later on in the game where you've got more hit points and stuff like that. Now, we are getting hit now by this M4A3E8, and we're going to fully aim on him, and unfortunately our shot takes one straight into the ground. Obviously wanted to get back to the demon headquarters right there, and unfortunately we did miss the M4, but maybe we'll get our revenge against him later, maybe not. You know, we picked up 1,500 combined, maybe 1,600 combined in this game, which is okay. You know, it's a tier 8 game. You're not going to be doing particularly that well in a tier 8 game, and you certainly find it very hard in this tank to be able to carry on a map like this, especially where, you know, you have to push and you have to have armor, I guess, or at least turret armor to be able to do that. We put one round into the Type 59 there, which was actually a really nice one. Helps out our team quite a lot because they're pushing from behind. It's looking like a very bad situation for our team here. Unfortunately, I forgot that I did actually go unspotted there. I should have probably aimed a little bit more because he had already fired at me, and I kind of rushed that shot, which put our team under a little bit more pressure that we really didn't need to be at, considering, you know, we're in this kind of position. Now the Type 59 gets spotted again. I'm pretty sure I actually spotted him there, which means we're getting a little bit of assistance damage from our teammates who can actually hit him from where they are in E1 and G1. Those kind of positions are really good if you have camouflage. If you don't, it's not particularly too fun for you. But certainly the E25 is doing a little bit of work for us as he plows 2 rounds into the Type 59 and takes him out in the game. Now the M48 Ram Panzer, or the one that everybody got for free if you got to tier 8 on the tech tree, I think the operation's kind of done, or the kind of the booster reward type thing that Wargaming released where everyone got it as long as you got to tier 8 on a tech tree. That is not a premium tank. You also got like a tier 3 reward premium, not anything special, and certainly I'm not that much of a fan of the Ram Panzer anyway, just because it doesn't have particularly too much going for it. It's kind of one of those that is just meh. Certainly not a tank that I'm going to be playing or trying to free mark anytime soon. You know, saying that, I did 3 mark the TVP recently, which was good. I'm going to try and 3 mark the SU100Y, I think, just as a bit of a kind of relaxation when I'm just messing about on tanks and I'm going to be playing in a platoon. Maybe I'll just jump in the SU100Y on occasion and try and get that 3 mark on it as quickly as possible. Now, our Excalibur tried to go in, probably not the best idea. I would have come round where I am and then moved that way. I would do it myself personally, but I am too slow in something like this, and that's where the mobility kind of sucks, and not being flexible at all in this tank. But, you know, that's all the trade-off to get that stupid gun that you get on this thing. And yeah, it's one of those things that you will 100% enjoy when you actually manage to pick this thing up. Comparing to like the SU100 at the same tier, obviously you get the higher alpha damage comparatively to the tech tree one, if you know what I mean. The SU100 leads on to the SU152, and then the ISU, and then eventually the Object 268. That tank is actually a fantastic one for those of you who haven't played the SU100. It really is great, and it's got that 390 alpha damage gun at tier 6, which can wipe away opponents very quickly. Got good DPM, its armour can work, it's not exceptional if you're coming up against tier 8s like any tank. You're pretty much not really going to bounce, even if you are like the heaviest armoured tier 6 in the game. When you come up against tier 8s, it really doesn't matter. As we managed to pick up another soul for the garage, or for hell I should say. You know, we're having a good game in this SU100. We're going to finish off another tank right there, the Borsig. We've claimed him. And then finally we've got the M48 E8, who had a little farming session on our side earlier. But luckily for us, the E25 manages to pick him up, and we don't have to deal with him ourselves. So yeah, another pretty decent game, I'd say, in the SU100Y. In that kind of matchup, you really didn't have much choice as to what I could do in that game. I had to kind of play a little bit passively and use my gun to the best of my ability anyway, and hopefully have some good damage game. But we managed to do that. We got 600 assisted, 3,000 combined isn't bad, 3 souls in the garage, and we blocked 110 damage from that M4. Mastery badge, which is probably just because we were fighting against you know, tier 8s for the majority of the game. Yeah, really good game, enjoyed it a lot, and I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay. Obviously the tank, should you want to pick it up, is only 1,800 gold. It's probably the best value for fun tank that I have in the garage. I reckon, you know, that's probably only £4 or something stupid like that to be able to pick up this tank, which is one of the best kind of fun tanks to play, especially if you're playing in a platoon. You've got other tier 6s like the Snakebite who can spot for you, and various different kind of platoon sizes when you're playing with your mates, and the Demon can certainly have some fun, especially when you one-shot ammo rack people, which tends to happen in this tank, although we didn't feature any in the game clips. That certainly happens in this tank, and when you pop off a Tiger 1 turret for 1,500 damage, yeah, really fun, and hopefully you enjoy. If you did enjoy, make sure to like the video, and also you can subscribe to see more content like this coming on a semi-regularly basis. Obviously I do update news videos every now and again, but primarily there'll be guides and gameplay for you guys to have a look at for World of Tanks console, and also hopefully maybe PC in the future, as soon as I get a PC, basically, because of the graphics card shortage, but that's another story. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week whenever you're watching this, and yeah, I hope you did enjoy. Goodbye.